Now that we have demand elasticity under our belts, we can move on to elasticity of supply. And we can get through this relatively quickly because it's exactly the same concept, but we're applying it to the sellers instead of applying it to the buyers. So sellers respond to changes in the price of a good by offering more or fewer units given the price. Same basic idea as the buyers, except here they're offering them for sale instead of offering to purchase those units. And in some markets, those sellers might be very responsive to changes in price. For example, in the price for toothpicks or furniture or playing cards, if the price goes up by a fairly small amount, it might be very easy for the sellers to offer more units. And if the price falls, they might cut back their production by quite a bit. So over here, I've got an elastic supply curve. That would be for more like the market for toothpicks, for example, where, if you want to produce 1 million more toothpicks, you only have to cut down a couple trees to make that happen. So if the price of this product is initially at P1, we've got a quantity of units supplied. Call it Q1. If the market price were to fall down to P2, notice that this market would almost completely collapse. Sellers would just almost completely stop producing in this market, and they would go do something else instead. They'd move into some other market. Q2. On the other hand, you have some markets where the supply curve is a lot steeper, which tells you that sellers are not as responsive to changes in price. So, for example, in California, it's very difficult when there's an increase in price of housing for sellers to put more housing onto the market because we have a lot of regulations, a lot of them environmental regulations in California that really stack up on developers and make it so that from the time a developer conceives of, a set of houses that they would like to build, to the time that they actually finish construction and can sell those houses, it could take a decade. Okay, that's just how much red tape we have on production here in Southern California. So that's going to be a more inelastic supply curve. And in this case, if I've got two prices, P1 and P2, cutting the price from P1 to P2 is going to have a relatively small impact on the quantity of units supplied. All right. And just like with the demand curve, the flatter curve was elastic and the steeper curve was inelastic. With supply, it's the same thing. The flatter curve is elastic supply. The steeper curve is a more inelastic supply curve.